My husband, Kian, was gravely ill with not much time left. Yet before he died, he adamantly insisted on divorcing me. He transferred all his assets and the company into my name, keeping nothing for himself. The night he signed the divorce agreement, he held me, sobbing uncontrollably. He said this was the last thing he could do for me. He didn't want me to be labeled a widow by others after his passing. It was his only dying wish. As his wife, how could I refuse? The night before we were to finalize the divorce, he suddenly fell into a coma and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor declared his condition critical, and I, without a moment's hesitation, signed the refusal of treatment form. Perhaps, by this point, I no longer needed to play this charade. When the doctor announced that my husband, Kian, had completely lost all vital signs, I remained silent for a moment, then forced out 2 tears. My body trembled as if trying to suppress my sobs, but in truth, a faint smile played on my lips. I immediately called the funeral home. When the staff arrived to transport the body, I handed each of them 500 yuan, asking them to be gentle with my husband. I looked at the manager and asked, with a hint of defiance, "I want him cremated immediately. Is that possible?" He touched the pocket containing the 500 yuan envelope, a slightly awkward expression on his face. "We only start cremations from 5:30 a.m. It's just past 3:00 a.m. now." "To make my husband the first to be cremated today," I offered, "I'll pay an additional 10,000 yuan. Faced with the temptation of money, he instantly agreed. As I spoke, I retrieved all the necessary documents: our marriage certificate, ID card, household registration, and Kian's death certificate. Upon hearing the news of my husband's death, his parents wailed inconsolably, beating their chests and stomping their feet. When they learned their son had been cremated by me that very night, one of them stared blankly before fainting, while the other rushed forward and slapped me twice. My head spun, and it took a long time to regain my composure. I called the police. My in-laws also reported me. I accused my father-in-law of assault after being hit. My ears were ringing, making it hard to hear what others were saying. My in-laws accused me of cremating their son without permission, preventing them from seeing his face one last time. Half an hour later, 2 police teams arrived. The officers on my side asked me to get a medical examination for my injuries, stating that if sufficient, charges would be pressed against the assailant. The officers on my in-laws' side informed them that a wife has full authority to handle her husband's cremation and funeral arrangements without needing the consent of his parents. In short, what I did might have been unethical, but it was legal. I carried the urn out of Kian's study. "Mom, Dad, this is Kian's ashes. Do you want to take them or should I help you?" My mother-in-law's eyes were bloodshot. Her hand trembled as she pointed at me, her lips quivering as if to curse, but she could only stammer, you, before choking back her words. I pulled out Kian's will. "Mom, it's not that I don't want to bury him. It's Kian himself who requested me to give his ashes to you too. He said he wanted to be buried in a place called Peach Blossom Valley." My mother-in-law finally reacted. She lunged, intending to tear me apart, but I quickly dodged behind a police officer, only poking my head out. "If he had a will arranging his final affairs, why did you dare to cremate my son without consulting us first? My son, my poor son, why do you suffer so?" My mother-in-law wailed dramatically. The police officer looked at me seriously. The officer who took my in-law's complaint spoke up, reprimanding me. "By law, a wife has the right to handle her husband's funeral arrangements, but that's when there's no specific will. In this case, you may have violated the law." My mother-in-law immediately stopped crying, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I presented both the video and the handwritten copy of Kian's will to the police. In the will, my husband only requested me to give his ashes to his parents for them to take to Peach Blossom Valley for burial. He did not specify who would cremate him, nor did he say how many days had to pass before cremation. The police examined it meticulously, reading it over 3 times. Then, they returned my phone and helplessly nodded at my mother-in-law. "She's right. If you suspect the legality of the will, you can file a lawsuit." My mother-in-law swayed, as if about to faint, her whole body reeling. My father-in-law quickly helped her upstairs to their room. The police officers watched them go, sighing. "They're still family, after all. Why make things so difficult? What you did was truly a bit inappropriate. From their perspective, that was their son. Was what you did fair to them? I remained silent. Fair? Was it fair when they conspired to deceive and toy with me like an ignorant fool? Did they ever consider fairness for me? I discovered Kian's deceit 3 months ago. His lung cancer had been under control, but suddenly the cancer cells spread rapidly. That night, he coughed incessantly, vomiting a lot of blood, and finally drifted into an exhausted sleep almost at dawn. I sat by his bed, my eyes swollen and red, my hair disheveled, my spirit shattered. I silently watched him for a long time, my fingers trembling as they traced the handsome contours of his face. I tried to suppress my sobs, afraid of waking him. During a hospital checkup, doctors found multiple metastatic tumors in his brain. They said surgery would be extremely difficult. I couldn't bear to imagine how I would survive if he were to leave this world one day. Since we met and fell in love in college, we had been together for exactly 14 years. 6 years of dating, 8 years of marriage. In my over 30 years of life, 14 years belonged to him. 3 years ago, Kian was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. I traveled with him to major hospitals, both domestic and international. Finally, by luck, we found a renowned elderly traditional Chinese medicine doctor in the capital. One of his prescriptions helped Kian prolong his life, seemingly reversing the tide of his illness. The first 2 doses of medicine significantly eased Kian's breathing. It was just that the process of preparing traditional Chinese medicine was overly complicated. Some required soaking beforehand, some had to be decocted first, others had to be added later. Some precious herbs even needed to be decocted 3 or 4 times separately. Even the medicine's temperature and consumption time had strict regulations. I was afraid others wouldn't do it well, so I took care of everything myself. Every day, I changed the menu, preparing nutritious meals to help him maintain his strength and boost his immunity. I put my work at the company aside for 3 years, dedicating myself wholeheartedly to caring for him at home. The only thing I wished for was for him to be with me for a few more years. Under my care, his health gradually recovered. He could even live a normal life. 3 months ago, at a follow-up visit, the doctor even said his condition was very well controlled. Yet, in just a few short months, we received a death sentence. When the doctor announced that the cancer cells had spread throughout his body, with multiple tumors even appearing in his brain, I was utterly numb. My legs gave out, and I collapsed to the floor. Kian, on the other hand, was remarkably calm. Perhaps it was just a pretense. He helped me up and held me tight. His voice was low, filled with suppressed emotion. Anya, this day was bound to come sooner or later. I've lived 3 years longer than the doctor predicted. Now, the sword hanging over my head has finally fallen. My only regret is not being able to walk with you to the end of our lives, leaving you to continue the journey alone. It's my fault. At that moment, I even thought of following him. That pain would probably be like being pierced by 1,000 arrows. But enough of distant thoughts. Let's return to how I discovered Kian's deception. Kian refused the doctor's immediate advice to be hospitalized. He said there were still many unresolved matters and insisted on returning home. The doctor prescribed a series of medications, advising him to increase the dosage slightly if the pain became too intense. Back home, Kian, pale-faced, said he wanted to be alone and walked into his study. I understood his despair and helplessness, so I didn't disturb him, just quietly shed tears. Then, as usual, I prepared him a nutritious meal: millet porridge, mashed vegetables, steamed fish, tofu, and beef ball soup. It wasn't until late that night that Kian emerged from his study. It was clear he had cried a lot. His eyes and nose were red, tears still stained his face, and even his voice was hoarse. My heart ached looking at him, unsure how to comfort him. Dinner passed in silence. After eating, he said he wanted to go for a walk. "Okay, I'll go with you," I said softly. He shook his head, his tone resolute. "Anya, my mind is in turmoil. I just want some quiet time alone, okay? I'll be fine, please." His voice was low, filled with pain and despair, making it impossible for me to refuse. But how could I feel at ease letting someone with late-stage cancer go out alone? I removed my apron and quietly followed him out the door. He didn't drive, just silently walked out of our residential area, crossed the park, and entered a private garden villa complex. This was Jade Pavilion Manor, a high-end villa complex much more expensive than our current row of townhouses. The guard at the gate seemed to know Kian, greeted him warmly, and opened the gate for him to enter. Of course, with such a high-end estate, I couldn't easily follow him in. I angrily pointed at Kian's receding back and loudly questioned the guard. "On what grounds do you let him in for a walk but not me? Are you discriminating based on gender?" I immediately slapped a big label on them. The young guard's mouth twitched slightly as he helplessly explained. "Ma'am, Mr. Kian is a homeowner here. If you buy a villa here, we'd welcome you home just the same." Kian was a homeowner here. I was stunned. I don't remember how I got back home. When I regained my senses, I had a dashcam memory card and 2 mini voice recorders with long standby times in my hand. I never let myself fall into an endless spiral of doubt. Such things only exhaust a person. If I had doubts, I had to find the truth. I went to Kian's car, replaced the dashcam's memory card, then placed the 2 mini recorders in places he frequently carried things. One in a small pocket of his bag, the other cleverly hidden in the lining of his vest. After a moment's thought, I went online and ordered a wireless mini camera that could connect remotely via phone with same-day delivery. After doing all that, I was drenched in sweat, but my heart was chilled to the bone, so cold that my entire body trembled. Kian left home around 7:00 p.m. and didn't return until almost midnight. I didn't turn on the lights, just sat silently on the sofa, lost in thought. He opened the door, turned on the light, and was startled when he saw me. "Anya, why aren't you asleep? I'm sorry, I made you worry. I shouldn't have come home so late. It's just, my heart feels so heavy." He apologized softly, then opened his arms and pulled me into a hug. His chin gently rubbed the top of my head, just as tenderly as he had for the past 8 years. He had a faint scent of perfume on him, exactly like the kind I used, but I hadn't sprayed any. His illness had worsened suddenly, and he'd been coughing up blood all night. What mood would I be in to do such things? Reality is always crueler than speculation. This shock not only shattered my 14 years of trust in Kian, but also made me see through my in-laws. I felt as if I had lived in a false world for so many years without knowing it. So let's start with Kian's dashcam. This type of camera could store up to 14 days of footage, and some urgent incidents would be recorded permanently. As I inserted the memory card into the adapter and connected it to my computer, my palms were sweating. I hoped it was all just my overactive suspicion, my imagination deceiving me. But when those images appeared, the blood in my veins seemed to freeze. Every day after leaving home, Kian would go to Jade Pavilion Manor to pick up a mother and child. I knew the woman. She was Serena, the administrative manager of Kian's best friend's company. He was the one who introduced her to the job. He had once said that Serena was his high school classmate, now divorced and raising a child alone, which wasn't easy, so he was just helping her out a bit. The little girl, about 7 or 8 years old, attended the experimental primary school. Lately, Kian had been picking her up and dropping her off every day. The dashcam only had one lens, so it couldn't record images inside the car, but there was audio. The woman called him honey, and even reminded Kian to remember to delete the dashcam data on time. It wouldn't be good if she found out. The man chuckled, replying, "I know, don't worry, she won't check. She's been so busy taking care of me with my illness these past few years. Even when I text you in front of her, she doesn't even bother to look once. All her attention is on my health. Actually, the traditional Chinese medicine she found is effective. If it weren't for her, I might not have lived until today." The little girl giggled. "Daddy, then is she a fool? Mommy often says she's a stupid woman, a cow or a horse working for our whole family." After a few seconds of silence, Kian chuckled softly and replied, "Mhm." As if encouraged, the little girl excitedly continued, "Last time, when Mom and I visited Grandma, she also said she was silly. Grandma said if she didn't still have some utility value, you would have brought Mom and me home a long time ago. Grandma also said, once Mom gives birth to my little brother, you'll bring Mom and me home." How could I describe my mood at that moment? I thought I would be enraged, collapse, go insane, or grab a knife and kill them. But in the end, I just let out a bitter laugh through my tears, then raised my hand and slapped myself hard twice. This man had slept beside me for 8 years, yet I hadn't realized he had always been deceiving me. This was my fault. I had naively believed that true love, enduring hardships together, actually existed in this world. my fault was even greater. And my in-laws, whom I had respected and cherished like my own parents, I was the one who gave them the opportunity to deceive me. Because I wasn't on guard, they could manipulate me in the palm of their hands. Therefore, the one who deserved to be slapped was me. After moving past that ultimate pain, my heart gradually became calmer. That's why when I looked at the footage from the mini camera placed in the study, watching Kian open his secret safe, revealing sparkling gold bars, precious jewelry, and stacks of cash, I no longer felt too shocked. I had never seen these things before, nor had I known of their existence, so I didn't believe Kian would leave all of it to me. Could it be that he had carefully hidden it all along, and then, on the verge of death, suddenly pulled it out to blind and move me? "Honey, look, this is a surprise gift I prepared for you before I die," he'd say, laughing. I couldn't even laugh. He seemed to be pondering how to divide these assets, writing and erasing on paper, then tearing it up in frustration and throwing it into the trash. I suppose anyone in this situation would feel troubled. To have an entire fortune in hand, but be on the verge of death, how could one be at peace? I coldly watched the images before me, my heart slowly filling with hatred. That night, Kian slept in his study. I pretended to be considerate, not disturbing him at all. The next morning, he left home for work as usual, carrying a trash bag from the study. How careful. Seeing the empty dining table without the usual nutritious breakfast, he frowned slightly. But he didn't criticize or inquire. Instead, his eyes were full of concern. "Anya, are you not feeling well today? I told you you can sleep in a bit in the morning. No need to wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. to cook for me. I can eat downstairs at the company building." I scoffed inwardly but maintained silence outwardly, offering no reply. I turned and went into the kitchen, bringing out the prepared bowl of medicine and placing it in front of him. "Careful, it's hot. If you're not well, don't go to the company. We can find a reliable CEO to manage things. It wouldn't be any different." Kian took the bowl of medicine, habitually drinking it all in one gulp. "It's not the same. While my body can still endure, I want to handle everything. When I'm gone, you won't have to worry." I lowered my eyes, concealing the mockery in my heart. He picked up his bag from the entrance, started changing his shoes. Just as he was about to step out the door, I called out, "Kian." He turned back, a hint of confusion in his eyes. "What is it?" I swallowed the bitter taste in my throat, struggling to speak. "Is there anything you want to tell me, or anything you're hiding from me right now?" I stared intently into his eyes, not blinking. The air seemed to freeze in that moment. Kian's hand, holding the trash bag, unconsciously clenched tighter. The humid, stifling wind from outside blew into the living room through the open door, but it couldn't dispel the chilling atmosphere. At that moment, I gave him a chance to confess and explain. If he had the courage to admit his mistakes and sincerely apologize, perhaps because he was dying, I would forgive him. Kian's throat moved slightly. He avoided my gaze. Instead, he asked, "Did you hear something from someone? Why are you suddenly asking this?" Seeing my silence, he continued, "Aside from work, I've spent almost all my time with you. You even know how many times a day I go to the bathroom. What could I possibly hide from you? If you don't believe me, I can swear it to you." My lips pressed together, trembling slightly as I forced out a strained smile. "I haven't heard anything from anyone. I'm just afraid you're enduring something alone. I just want to tell you that no matter what it is, I can shoulder it with you. No matter how much time the doctors say you have left, I won't abandon you, just like 3 years ago." He was stunned, his eyes gradually reddening. "Anya, thank you. Marrying you, I have no regrets in this life. Rest assured, until the very last moment, I will not give up on myself. I will continue treatment, trying to stay with you a little longer." Looking at the man in front of me, who was clearly moved by his own words, I was utterly disappointed. "Then hurry to the company. Remember to take care of yourself." Kian nodded, turned, and walked out the door. The door closed, and my heart sank to the bottom of an abyss. But at the same time, it made me even more resolute in my upcoming actions. No more hesitation, no more lingering attachments. "Did you hear what we said?" A stern voice pulled me from my thoughts of the past. I looked at the police officer speaking to me. "We understand your pain in losing your husband, and we can sympathize with your agitated actions, but you should also think of his parents. Now, they are seeing their child pass before them. Don't provoke them any further." the older police officer advised me in a sincere tone. I retorted, "Officer, I haven't provoked them at all. I only called to inform them of their son's death. They themselves barged into my house and, without a word, slapped me twice." As soon as my words ended, my mother-in-law's shrill voice rang out again. "Your house? What do you mean your house? This is clearly my son's house. Get out of here right now." She had just entered the room, then angrily stormed down the stairs, her bloodshot eyes glaring at me as if she wanted to tear me to shreds. I was so used to seeing them as kind, simple, elderly people. Their sudden transformation was truly unsettling. How could they have two such different faces? I pulled out the deed of gift and the notarized document with Kian's signature. "Mom, didn't Kian tell you? A month ago, he transferred this house to me as a gift. Here are the documents, please see." My mother-in-law immediately reached out to snatch the stack of documents from my hand. "This agreement must be fake. My son clearly said he would only leave you an empty company and a pile of debts. This house and all its assets belong to us. How could he give it to you?" The sympathetic expression of the police officer towards my in-laws immediately changed, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. In truth, Kian had indeed intended to leave this house to his parents. It was just unfortunate for him that I discovered his secret beforehand. I quickly hid behind the police officer, feigning innocence. "I don't know about that. Perhaps in Kian's heart, his parents combined weren't as important as me. He once said that throughout his life, the person he loved most was me." My mother-in-law completely collapsed. She shrieked, a piercing sound like an alarm, and lunged, trying to tear me apart, but the police officer stopped her. The officer sternly shouted, "State your case clearly. If you continue to cause a disturbance, I won't hesitate to take you to the station to talk." My mother-in-law was blocked, but her eyes still glared at me with resentment. My father-in-law was much calmer than she was. He narrowed his eyes at me with deep hatred, then turned to the police officer. "Officer, I suspect she killed my son. She was afraid we would find evidence, which is why she rushed the cremation to destroy any traces." The police officer gave him a cold glance and asked, "An accusation of murder is not a simple matter. Do you have any evidence?" My father-in-law choked, then stubbornly said, "Evidence? Of course, you people need to investigate. If I found the evidence myself, why would I need the police?" The police officer looked at him with a helpless expression. I turned and went into Kian's study, retrieved a thick stack of medical records along with his death certificate and cremation certificate from 3 years ago. "My husband was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer 3 years ago. Here are the diagnostic results." I took out the test results from 3 years ago, handed them to the police, and continued. But fortunately, his condition was controlled thanks to medication. However, 3 months ago, the illness relapsed. The cancer cells have metastasized throughout his body. Last night, he suddenly had a seizure and vomited blood. I immediately called an ambulance. He passed away at the hospital because he couldn't be saved in time. I only proceeded with his cremation after receiving the death certificate from the hospital. I briefly recounted the entire incident. The police officer flipped through the test results and medical records, then asked suspiciously, "Logically speaking, given your husband's condition, shouldn't he have been hospitalized for treatment? Why was he at home?" A flicker of mockery appeared in my eyes. He was the one who adamantly refused to stay in the hospital. His primary doctor and I advised him many times, but he wouldn't listen. The police officer maintained his scrutinizing and suspicious gaze. I shrugged. "If you don't believe me, you can go to the oncology department of this hospital to investigate. His primary doctor, Dr. Chen, can verify this." The police officer said coldly, as he handed the documents back to me, "You just need to recount the events. How we investigate is not for you to advise." I pouted, saying nothing more. After more than 2 hours of noisy arguments, with the patient persuasion of the police, we signed a reconciliation report. I handed the urn of ashes to my in-laws for them to bury their son in that place called Peach Blossom Valley. I heard that was where Kian and Serena first became intimately entangled. I placed the urn in my father-in-law's hands, my tone as nonchalant as if discussing a trivial household matter. "Dad, according to Kian's last wishes, I've given his ashes to you too. Today, I won't keep you for dinner. You should go home early. I won't be attending his funeral either. I've been a bit tired lately and want a rest. The police officer, who was putting away his body camera recording the enforcement actions, twitched his mouth, looking at me as if I were a monster. My father-in-law clutched the urn to his chest. Only then did he truly realize his son was dead. He no longer had the presence of mind to make trouble for me, only held the urn tightly, tears streaming down his face. My mother-in-law also cried until her voice was hoarse and she could barely stand upright. I crossed my arms, one leg relaxed, calmly watching the scene unfold. When my in-laws stepped out the door, I slammed it shut with a decisive thud. Returning to the living room, I realized my body was so exhausted I had no strength left. I couldn't even stand steadily. I clung to the railing, struggling to climb to the second-floor bedroom, then heavily collapsed onto the bed. Kian's scent still lingered on the pillow. I suddenly felt intensely nauseous, immediately got up, and ran to the guest room next door. Very quickly, I fell into a deep sleep. In the chaotic haze of my dream, the events of the past 3 months incessantly replayed, tearing apart my already shattered heart. The extreme pain made me writhe in my dream, struggling without cease. I still remember, when I held the company's real financial reports from the past few years, my entire body went numb. Disappointment was like a sharp blade piercing my heart. For 3 years, while caring for Kian, I had poured my heart and soul into it, exhausting both my physical and mental strength, gradually withdrawing from company management. Yet, during that time, he had secretly tampered with the company's finances, creating false debts and fake loss reports. 70% of the company's assets had been siphoned off. It was almost bankrupt. Over the years, he would either cite the company's need for working capital or say he needed money for medical treatment, successively taking millions of yuan in cash from me. He had almost drained all the money I had, yet I had never suspected. Through 14 years together, we had overcome so many difficulties. I firmly believed we were each other's most reliable partners. What's more, money was merely an external possession. A person with a terminal illness like him couldn't take money to his grave, so what did he need money for? But his betrayals didn't stop there. Since his illness relapsed, he suddenly became unusually busy. Besides secretly transferring my and his assets, he was also busy arranging the future life for Serena and her child, and everything had been clearly recorded by the audio devices. First, he contacted an insurance company, setting up over 20 insurance policies specifically for Serena and her child. Then, he carefully selected the best educational resources for the little girl, even paying all the fees in advance. He called each of his close friends, asking them to take care of his parents and Serena and her child after his death. He even told them, "In my next life, I swear to be an ox or a horse to repay your kindness." And what about me? This is what he told his friends. "Anya is very cunning and calculating. You absolutely must not let anything slip in front of her. After I die, it's best to cut off all contact with her completely. If she discovers the existence of Serena and her child, a naive and kind woman like Serena, who doesn't know how to scheme, will surely be devoured by Anya, leaving not even a single bone." After 14 years together, he naturally understood me well. Because when we started our business together, I was always more sober than him and more decisive in my actions. During business negotiations, I always wore a gentle smile and spoke softly, yet could quickly grasp the key points to secure maximum benefits for myself. Even when facing difficult situations, I always weighed things carefully before deciding whether to give up or hold on. I was accustomed to keeping my thoughts hidden, but for him, I was always sincere, holding nothing back. So what did I get in return? Before his death, he had taken care of everyone else, but was utterly cruel to me. I guess perhaps in my previous life, I had dug up his ancestors' graves and flogged their corpses, which is why I was treated this way in this life. Otherwise, I truly couldn't understand. After everything was arranged, Kian unexpectedly proposed divorce. "Anya, let's get divorced." At that moment, I had just walked out of the kitchen, still holding the bowl of medicine I had prepared for him. Hearing those words, I froze, my hands trembling, and the bowl of medicine fell to the ground, shattering. I stared at him in a daze, both shocked and bewildered. Kian paused briefly when he saw the medicine spilled on the floor. His eyes reddened, and his voice was hoarse. Anya, I'd rather you bear the name of a divorcee than become a widow. I don't want people to gossip about you behind your back. He pulled me into his arms, his hot tears falling onto my shoulder, stinging like needles, making my whole body uncomfortable. He whispered softly, "After I die, everything can be let go. Only you I can't be at peace about. For so many years, you've always stood by me, without a single complaint. Even in the most difficult times, you were there for me. It's a good thing we don't have children. You can find someone who truly loves you to be by your side, in my place." I cut him off, my voice calm to the point of coldness. "We once had a child. You carelessly spilled the oil lamp in the kitchen but didn't tell me. I walked into the kitchen and suddenly fell, losing the baby. At that time, I was 7 months pregnant, and because of that, I can't have children anymore." Kian's body stiffened, his arms around me unconsciously tightening. "I'm sorry, I was so distraught then that I forgot. Even now, I still remember vividly that day." Kian went mad, holding me, my lower body drenched in blood, rushing straight to the hospital. When the doctor announced that the baby couldn't be saved, and furthermore, due to premature placental abruption and excessive blood loss, it would be very difficult for me to conceive again, he painfully knelt on the ground, slapping himself repeatedly, tears and snot mixing into a single stream. He wailed with regret. "After the divorce, I'll leave all my assets to you, but can I keep this house for my parents? I don't want you to live alone in this empty house, seeing my yin zai everywhere and feeling sad. I'm afraid you'll never let go of the past." I had to admit, he was truly thoughtful. He even worried about my state of mind after his death. But if he hadn't secretly transferred assets, if he hadn't given me a company that had been hollowed out to the point of bankruptcy, perhaps I would have been moved. Unfortunately, I absolutely would not let him have his way. I did not agree to the divorce. Not only that, 2 days later, I invited a team of professional auditors into the company, asking them to review all abnormal financial issues from the past few years. Kian panicked. His face turned pale as he questioned me. "Anya, what is this? Why are there suddenly auditors in the company? Do you suspect me of financial fraud?" I calmly reassured him. "What are you thinking? How could I suspect you? After you're gone, I plan to hand the company over to a professional CEO, so we have to prepare now. If we wait until you're gone and the company is in chaos, even a capable CEO wouldn't want to take over. I'm just afraid that even after you're gone, you won't be able to rest in peace." Kian looked at me with complex eyes, seemingly unable to accept that I uttered the word death so casually. I don't know if he felt something was unusual about me, but recently he became much more vigilant of me. This was because lately I had barely left his side, not even half a step. Even in the middle of the night, if he woke up to use the restroom, I almost followed him with a flashlight. I wasn't worried about him. What I was truly worried about was him taking advantage of my absence to secretly move all the gold bars and jewelry from his study. He deserved this for being so overconfident, treating me like a fool to toy with. Now that the truth was exposed by me, I wouldn't let him take even a penny. Kian grew increasingly irritable, frequently losing his temper with me, but I continued to act understanding, as if it was only because of his illness that he was this way. Every day, I woke up in the middle of the night to decoct his medicine. What kind of medicine? Well, it's not convenient to say clearly. Anyway, it was a tonic. As long as it didn't kill him, it was fine. Half a month later, Kian finally couldn't take it anymore. He went mad, smashing everything in the house, yelling about wanting a divorce, almost losing his mind. He screamed, "This is my last wish before I die. Why can't you fulfill it?" I remained silent. Yes, I loved him so much. How could I not fulfill his last wish? I wiped my tears and choked out, "Divorce is fine, but I don't need anything else. This house I absolutely must keep." Kian gritted his teeth, saying nothing. I continued to cry, "No matter what, I'm not leaving here. At worst, I'll let your parents move in with me later. Don't expect to drive me away." After some thought, he seemed to make a big decision. "Originally, I was just afraid you'd be reminded of me here. If you're so determined to have this house, then take it. My parents, I'll arrange something else for them." I immediately called a lawyer, requesting a deed of gift, video evidence, and official notarization. Kian frowned, looking at me suspiciously. "Is it really necessary to call a lawyer? When we divorce, I can directly divide the assets for you. Why go through all this trouble?" I shook my head, still crying. This house is the only thing I'm fixated on. I won't allow any complications to arise. Kian, despite his reluctance, agreed to expedite his escape from me. After all, it was just a house. Compared to the massive fortune he had secretly transferred, this house was nothing. The next morning, I drove him to the land registry office to complete the title transfer, and exactly 2 days before he died, I received the new title deed in my name. The divorce agreement was very simple. Kian left empty-handed. All assets and the company were transferred to me, but from what I knew, currently, apart from the house, which wasn't in debt, everything else was a trap. Even the Audi A8 he had driven for the past 3 years had been mortgaged for loans. Men, once they turn heartless, are truly terrifying. On the very day we finalized the divorce agreement, we went directly to the Civil Affairs Bureau to schedule the procedure. The moment he received the application receipt, Kian's eyes suddenly reddened. He looked at me for a long time, finally speaking in a remorseful voice. "Anya, I'm sorry." Crocodile tears. I only wished I could spit directly in his face. At this moment, his phone suddenly rang. I glanced at the screen. It showed Serena. Kian immediately hung up then, feigning a need to use the restroom, told me to wait for him a moment. I pretended not to know anything, casually found a seat in the lobby, and sat down. Then I sent a text message to my cousin. "Bro, when are you finally coming back? I'm afraid I can't wait." My cousin replied, "My project finishes, I have 20 days off." I was anxious. "I can wait, but those gold bars can't. Hurry up. When you're done, I'll split it with you." My cousin immediately called me directly. "Zio Nyan, you absolutely must wait for me. 2 weeks at the fastest, no, 10 days. I'll be back right away. You can't ask anyone else for help with this." My cousin graduated with a computer science degree from a prestigious international university. Asking him to crack Kian's safe was like using a butcher knife to kill a chicken, but I had no one else I could trust. Actually, the assets Kian had hidden were originally our joint property. I could have rightfully taken them back, and no one could have said anything. But he liked to play sneaky games, like the thrill, didn't he? Then I absolutely had to cooperate with him. By then, when he saw the safe emptied by me, his expression would surely be priceless. Perhaps thanks to the tonics I prepared for him every day, Kian's health seemed to improve daily, and his spirits were much better. In the traditional Chinese medicine, I also added the painkillers prescribed by the doctor, which helped ease his pain. This gave him the illusion that he would also be lucky, just like 3 years ago. Who knew, maybe he would live another 3 years? Lately, he went out more frequently. Partly because I hired auditors to review the books daily, he couldn't help but go to the company to supervise. Partly because he still had to spend time with Serena and her child. Sometimes he'd take them to the neighboring city for shopping, sometimes to an amusement park. There were even a few times, while the little girl was at school, he and Serena took advantage of the time to try and make another baby. Sometimes in the living room, sometimes in the car, sometimes even in the wilderness. I was speechless. With his body in this state, he wouldn't be able to jump around for much longer, yet he was still trying so hard to leave behind offspring. Unbelievable, but I wish them luck. 2 weeks later, my cousin finally returned. Just as Kian again opened his safe to place a few stacks of cash inside, I guessed he wouldn't open it again anytime soon. That evening, while he was out, I immediately contacted my cousin. In less than half an hour, my cousin had cracked the B3 level security safe that Kian once boasted about. My cousin and I, in 2 trips, emptied everything inside. I roughly counted over 200 gold bars of 100G each, dozens of 500G gold bars, several dozen stacks of cash, each stack 100,000 yuan, along with some rare jewelry like imperial jade, diamonds, rubies, and sapphires, all purchased from auctions. The total value was at least several tens of millions of yuan. This was definitely the money he had siphoned from the company over the years. Damn, truly insatiable greed. A week later, I held documents from an anonymous auditing team, filing a complaint against the company with the tax authorities and the Department of Industry and Commerce, reporting fraudulent financial records, tax evasion, and tax fraud. At the same time, I authorized my lawyer to collect evidence to file a lawsuit. My goal was to confirm that the abnormal debts were fake, recover all losses, and hold those involved legally accountable. Taking this opportunity, I also intended to expose the rotten parasites Kian had been harboring within the company. After being investigated by the tax authorities and the Department of Industry and Commerce, Kian was in extreme distress, his morale plummeting rapidly. I knew he suspected me. After all, I had just brought auditors into the company, and then the company was immediately reported. Of course, he did suspect me. Now, he no longer had the mind to date Serena. He practically rooted himself at the company for 16 hours a day, probably wanting to salvage the situation. The day to receive the divorce certificate arrived. It seemed he had forgotten. I called to remind him, the waiting period for the divorce is over. Are you free tomorrow to pick up the divorce papers? Kian was silent for a long time on the other end. I curled my lips into a smile. That evening, he came home earlier than usual. As soon as he entered, he stormed straight into his study. A few minutes later, a tragic shriek like a pig being slaughtered echoed from inside. I didn't move a muscle, calmly scrolling through videos on my phone. After all, the study door was locked. Even if I wanted to go in, I couldn't. Not long after, the study door was flung open. Kian's face was ashen, his whole body trembling. His throat emitted indistinct, choked sounds. Call the police. Call the police immediately. Someone stole my safe. I want to chop that person into pieces. Oh, it seems he had discovered his safe was empty. I coldly watched Kian walk into the study step by step, my eyes scanning the messy floor. Items on his desk had been swept clean, his phone had fallen beside the chair, and the safe was wide open and empty. I picked up his phone from the floor and quietly slipped it into my pocket. Why is there a safe in here? What did you keep in it? Kian stammered, speechless for half a day. It's important company documents. I couldn't help but laugh. What kind of documents are worth you panicking like this? I thought it was gold bars. Kian froze, then seemed to suddenly realize, his eyes burning with fury. I dropped my smile, my gaze turning cold. I walked to the bookshelf, stopping in front of a shelf directly in front of him. I took down a mini camera attached to the ear of a stuffed panda on the second shelf. Kian's face immediately froze, his eyes widening in horror, his breathing rapid like a bellows being stretched. I gave a faint smile, my voice light as a breeze. This camera has been here for 3 months. Didn't you notice? You fool, I laughed, but this laugh was more like a demon's than a human's, because Kian's expression now was as if he'd just seen a ghost. He roared, "You dared to monitor me. I'm calling the police right now." He trembled as he fumbled in his pocket but couldn't find his phone. I slowly pulled his phone out of my pocket and shook it in front of him. Looking for your phone. Kian's eyes were filled with malice as he lunged at me, trying to snatch it. I dodged aside. He lost his balance and stumbled straight to the ground. After a violent, choking cough, fresh blood spewed from his mouth. Perhaps due to difficulty breathing, his hands clutched his chest tightly, looking immensely pained. "Anya, save me. Call an ambulance. I'm in so much pain, I can't breathe." I looked down at him, my face devoid of emotion. No matter how he begged for help, I didn't care. I calmly picked up the scattered items on the floor, placing them back in their correct positions one by one. Kian tried to get up several times, but each time, I used my sock-clad foot to press on his shoulder, forcing him back down. Then, I leisurely found my and his ID cards, household registration, marriage certificate, will, and divorce agreement. Whether they would be useful or not, I took them all. After I was done, I leisurely sat in his office chair, glancing at the man lying on the ground, gasping like a dog. It wasn't until his struggles weakened that I calmly picked up the phone and called an ambulance. After 40 minutes of emergency treatment, the doctor came out and handed me a critical condition notice, telling me to prepare myself. I was ready, so I decisively signed the refusal of treatment form, my expression completely serene. After treatment was stopped, I walked into the hospital room to visit Kian as a final show of concern before his death. The moment he saw me approach, his eyes widened, staring as if he wanted to tear me to shreds right there. But by then, he could no longer speak, only breathe heavily, a faint mist fogging his oxygen mask. I leaned down and whispered into his ear, "It's such a pity I couldn't personally send you to prison." Kian's pupils immediately constricted, his face once again filled with terror. I smiled and continued, "I've taken all the money from the safe. Don't worry, I'll leave your parents retirement money for them. But the villa, the cars, and everything you gave your little mistress, I will definitely reclaim it all." I gently stroked his hair, tenderly as if in a passionate embrace. Let me guess, have you ever done a paternity test with that child? I guess not. After all, she looks just like you, doesn't she? I pretended to think for a moment, then added softly, oh, right. I guess Serena also has another one in her belly now, so she certainly hasn't done a test either. What proof do you have that they are your children? If they're not your children, how can they have the right to contest inheritance from my hands? Each word I spoke echoed clearly in his ears. I lightly patted the back of his hand, my tone gentle. Oh, right. You told your friends I was cunning and deep, didn't you? Well, I can't let your high opinion of me down. It's a shame you won't get to see the interesting dramas when I deal with your mistress and her clique later. But don't worry, I will live well. You can die in peace. Kian took his last breath right before my eyes. After he died, his eyes were wide open. Perhaps this is what they call dying with open eyes. I recalled that a month before drafting the divorce agreement, Kian also pretended to write a will. The content was very simple. Since he had transferred all his assets to me in the divorce agreement, he would leave empty-handed. The will only had one thing: arranging his own funeral. He wanted me to give his ashes to his parents, saying he wanted his soul to return to his hometown. But it was all a charade. After all, if we were truly divorced, an ex-wife like me wouldn't be able to handle his cremation because I wouldn't have the legal standing to get the papers approved. But in his wildest dreams, he never imagined he would die before the divorce was even finalized. Before that, he had told me Peach Blossom Valley was where I grew up. Every spring, peach blossoms bloomed everywhere. He said, I want to be buried there. Of course, I couldn't let him have his wish. So, after the cremation, right on the way home from the funeral home, I threw his ashes away. What his father brought back was just a box of fake ashes made of plaster. It was a painstaking effort I had prepared for half a month beforehand. Fearing his parents' suspicion, I even searched for images of urns online and ordered a fake model. Kian's funeral hadn't even concluded when I directly filed a lawsuit against Serena. I demanded she return all the assets Kian had gifted her during our marriage. Serena was utterly stunned. On the day of the trial, my in-laws were also present. My father-in-law sat in the witness chair. Serena was almost in tears, choking out, My daughter is Kian's child. She has the right to inherit her father's assets. The judge sternly stated, the court relies only on evidence. Just because you say she's his child doesn't make her his child. Serena quickly interjected, I have proof, I have a paternity test. The thing I least expected was that she actually produced a DNA test report. It felt like a hammer blow to my head, my hands unconsciously clenched into fists. But upon examining the report, the judge frowned. This evidence is invalid. This is a self-administered test. It cannot determine if the sample truly came from Kian. I quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Serena still tried to argue. Even if I did it myself, the results still show a paternity index of over 99.9%, proving this is a biological father-daughter relationship. The judge pressed on, then how can we confirm that the father's DNA sample in this test is indeed Kian's? Serena was speechless, cornered. She hurriedly pointed to Kian's parents, who were sitting in the witness rows. Kian's parents can testify for me. They were both there when I gave birth. His mother even took care of me during my confinement month. The judge slammed his gavel, sternly shouting, Nonsense! Those cannot be considered legal evidence. Do you have any other evidence? My mother-in-law jumped up, hastily saying, What else do you need to prove? That child is my son's biological daughter. She's looked exactly like Kian since she was little. Why do we still need a DNA test? Then she glared at the judge, accusing, I think you've been bribed by that conniving woman, Anya. She must have paid you off, that's why you're deliberately making things difficult for us. All you people care about is money, with no ethics whatsoever. My father-in-law, panicked, immediately jumped up and covered her mouth, stopping her from saying anything more. But the judge was not easily fooled. Right there, he ordered the court police to remove them from the trial. For more than half a year, I practically ran back and forth between courtrooms. On one hand, I filed a lawsuit to recover company losses, accusing Kian's unscrupulous friends of creating fake debts and illegal money laundering. On the other hand, I had to contend with the lawsuit against Serena. The case with the company went very smoothly. The evidence was abundant, and it only took 2 court sessions to conclude. But Serena's side was not so easy to deal with. She was stubborn, refusing to return the assets Kian had given her during his lifetime. At this point, the child in her womb was almost due. Kian was dead but was still becoming a father again. Finally, the court was forced to enforce the judgment. On the day I repossessed the villa and cars, Serena held her belly, crying hysterically, almost going mad. She screamed in despair, "How can you be so vicious? Both my children are Kian's children. Can't you be a little merciful? No wonder you couldn't have children. This is your karma." She shrieked curses at me, using the most venomous words, but I didn't even turn to look at her, walking straight towards my car. If my karma was falling in love with the wrong person, then your karma is me. I hope she lives the rest of her life like a maggot in a sewer, crawling in the shadows, never daring to lift her head and face the world. After all, someone like her doesn't deserve to see the light. I got into the car. The driver started the engine. From the car window, I watched the stream of people and vehicles gradually recede and disappear behind me. I knew the 14 years of love, hatred, and revenge could finally come to an end here.